Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of the Great Leadership Awakening Summit. I am your host, Kaylee O'Keefe, the founder of Soul Excellence Publishing, and I could not be more excited to introduce you to someone I've known for almost 3 years now. We'll get into it, but who I only got to meet in person and hug for the first time at our launch party on Friday. The wonderful, the amazing Kasia Hein Peters. Welcome, Kasia.
Thank you very much, Kylie. It was really a pleasure to meet you face to face last week. I truly enjoyed it, and also meeting other authors at our little event in Beverly Hills.
Oh, it's like it was the weekend of the Academy Awards. I did feel like we were celebrities, just soaking it all in. And for those of you who, of course, if you haven't read the book yet, you don't know anything about Kasia. Kasia is an MD. I think you're the only doctor actually that we've worked with in Soul Excellence Publishing over the last 3 years. You've had a storied career in the pharmaceutical space, and you're also now the founder of SciencePreneur Academy. It's like, what haven't you done? We're going to talk about all the changes, but you and I go way back to the first ever book of Soul Excellence Publishing, Leading Through the Pandemic.
Yes.
So you're now a 2-time author. Does it feel any different? Like, how does it feel this time around publishing in the Great Leadership Awakening?
Well, I think that the first book was really a great experience, and my first writing a chapter together with other authors. But I think because of the pandemic, we couldn't meet together. I think we did meet on some Zoom calls. But it almost felt this way around. It felt like we all, both you, me, other authors, we kind of had more opportunities to really focus on the chapters, and then the event that we had last week was really something very, very nice to meet other authors. The summit that we are doing, that we didn't do that at that time. I think we probably were more busy, and maybe I'm speaking about myself. I was definitely more busy 3 years ago, not necessarily in a good way, trying to address the pandemic. I think we were all more frightened because the pandemic was still in the middle of it. It was not ending. So generally the emotions around the first book were a little different than now. I think now we, even though the pandemic is still around, we kind of psychologically are emerging from it already, and psychologically and emotionally, we are in a different place. So it does feel different than the first book, although the first book was very interesting too.
Yeah, what I felt in leading through the pandemic is we really did need each other. We were all working in our separate spheres, doing what we needed to do. But this book was like, okay, here's a place to go to feel safe, heard, and seen for a moment. And then the energy of this one, of course, has been let's get out there, let's share our message, let's share the transformation that's happening. And I mean, in your chapter, you start, so let's ask you about what's happened the last 3 years since we first met, but you start, the pandemic fundamentally challenged my views on how I should spend the remaining years of my professional career. What happened? What had to change? What challenged you? What was oh, okay, something's got to give. I have a new purpose.
Yes, I think that the pandemic almost put into focus things that maybe were slowly transpiring in my life already, but without me maybe paying too much attention to them. I think during the pandemic, a few things happened for me. First of all, for the first time in my life, I probably have a total burnout. And this was just because of the amount of work. When the pandemic started, I was already transitioning from one job to another. But because it was difficult to find my successor, I actually had 2 full-time jobs for a while. And then in addition to that, I was in charge of our COVID-19 response in the company that I worked at that time. Why? Well, because I was in charge of PR and communications at that time, because I had experience with crisis management from my previous work. You know, pharmaceutical companies go through crisis all the time. So working for pharma means that you really get a lot of exposure to crisis management. So all these things made me, of course, I didn't do all the work myself, but I was leading the kind of the team of teams. And each of these teams was addressing a specific aspect of how we need to respond to the pandemic. But at the same time, I actually had 3 jobs, and it felt like 3 full-time jobs. And what frustrated me, not entirely the amount of work, which obviously was a huge burden, but the fact that there were not enough hours in a day to actually do any of that well. And I think I focused probably more on COVID-19 response because it was urgent and dangerous. I focused a little bit less on my 2 other jobs. And I had this feeling that I'm constantly failing. Was not necessarily viewed this way by my colleagues and friends at work, but I felt that I just cannot continue like that. And I just started to feel more than ever the burden of a corporate job. Because it was not always what was truly needed that counted. Sometimes it was what was politically motivated that counted. And I'm not talking about the COVID response, I'm talking about my other jobs. When I was trying to set up priorities, I think the politics came in loud and clear, and I didn't feel like I'm focusing on the right things. So this started me to question if this is really the right environment for me moving forward. Because I don't have too many years of my career ahead of me, probably about 10. And I was like, well, do I really want to just react to what others feel are important without me internally feeling that this is what I should do? So I think that was one very big insight. And I don't want to say that I don't like the corporate world. I think it served me very well for about 30 years. I've learned a lot. I think that I worked for some very good and some very good companies with very decent cultures. And I think I cannot highlight enough how much I've learned. But I think at some point in time, you also feel that you do not learn so much more in the corporate world anymore. Again, don't want to say that I've learned everything that was there, but I probably learned most that was there. So this motivation of continuous learning and development was not so strong anymore either. So this was one big insight. And the second big insight was when we started to develop drugs and vaccines to address the pandemic. I was really amazed how quickly 2 startup companies emerged. And this was BioNTech, who obviously partnered with Pfizer, but the technology was from BioNTech, and then Moderna. And how quickly these 2 companies organized themselves and were able to put new vaccines on the market. And I think that actually highlighted the fact that I knew about, but it never really struck me so much, is that the innovation in medicine is most frequently happening. The breakthrough innovation in medicine is most frequently happening in startup companies. Sure. Big companies are very good in taking on these innovations later on and developing them into drugs and vaccines and putting them on the market, because that's where their competency is. But the actual breakthrough innovation, bringing in new technologies, is really the startup competency. And then this combined with the fact that these 2 startups were incredibly successful, and there are very good reasons for it, which I don't think we'll get into it during this interview, but there are just some even, business cases describing why they were more successful than others. But then you see there were at some point in time almost 200 COVID-19 vaccines in development, because I was watching this space very closely. And you can see that most of them did not succeed. So the question was why? And I started looking into this space and found out that many founders of these startups are people who are incredibly knowledgeable about science. They may be doctors, engineers, scientists, but they really do not. So they know the science behind vaccines, probably know how to develop them in order to get regulatory approval, but they really don't know how to launch them, how to commercialize them. And commercialization means that a successful commercialization means that more patients will have access to it. And they don't necessarily know how to do it. So I was like, well, and here I am with my 30 years of knowledge of actually how to do it, because that's what I've been doing for 30 years. And here are these brilliant scientists who sometimes cannot break through because they don't have this knowledge. So this was the kind of the second big insight during the pandemic. And I decided to reorient my career toward helping these innovative companies to succeed.
And so that led you to founding your own consulting company, to founding SciencePreneur Academy, which we'll get to in just a second. But, you know, one of the things I'm really hearing you say is starting to say like, how do I put myself back into the equation and like what I love, what my needs are after being in this like go, 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 give mode for 30 years in your career, taking on these 3 jobs at once during like the height of stress in 2020. And I want to talk about SciencePreneur Academy, but you know, you also had the decision point where you could have stayed, you could have retired, you could have just like taken it easy for a while. And it's like, what was going on within that said like, okay, like I'm feeling drawn in this direction. And the follow-up to that is, you know, what's been the hardest part about leading corporate? Because I know we have many women who are joining here, who are in a similar position, who are looking around and who are like, that looks kind of exciting, but also there's no security, there's no plan, like that also looks really scary. So why was this the path for you? And how has it been since leaving and stepping forward on your own path?
So I think it was not an easy decision. And I don't want to pretend that it was very straightforward, because you're right. A big company provides a much more safety net. There is a paycheck that comes every second week. There are benefits for me and my husband. So it was really, you know, the decision to leave so much money on the table is never easy. And I think that I would not necessarily recommend this to people who do not have a financial safety net. So this was also part of the equation. We both me and my husband, we've reached the point when I was able to make this decision without having to worry about our finances anymore. And and I think that's something that we always need to think about. So yes, it's exciting to lead, it's exciting to do things on your own, but then you have to plan for several months of, unless you are an overnight success, which many of us are, but after a few years of hard work, unless you are truly an overnight success, the business development when you are a solopreneur takes a lot of time, and the selling cycles are not very short. So you need to factor this selling cycles and business development into the equation, and assume that for the first several months, if not a year, you will be basically working on learning the new market. Even though you may think that you will be learning the new market. You will be refining your offers. You will be, maybe pivoting once or twice into some new areas because of things that you haven't envisioned, and because of the changes in the market. Right, we are seeing now a much tighter venture capital than in the past. I've just learned this morning that one of the companies where I was an advisor is closing because of the lack of venture capital. So you need to be able to be flexible and also build the safety net before, so that you don't become too nervous when some contracts take longer to sign, when big companies take 60 days to pay once you submit an invoice. It's building the safety net financially and emotionally, so that you don't feel like you have to jump and earn money right away. Now, if you have to continue earning money right away, I would not necessarily recommend to leave the corporate right away. I would recommend to build a career on a side, a second career on a side, right? And then see how it develops. If it grows, if you feel that it can sustain you, then you can do it full time. And I know people like that who are passionate about helping startups, like me, and then they do it on a side. They
Mhm.
don't leave their main careers.
You know, Kasia, when I talk to a lot of people who, I mean, myself included, who leave the
Mhm.
corporate environment, who go on this startup journey, there can be this like loss of identity or this little like crisis of like, wait, who am I? What is my purpose? Did you have to navigate any of those feelings as you took this leap and you've started this journey and you're it's successful and succeeding right now, but how did you kind of grapple with like what came up as you left that world behind?
I think you're right that there is a bit of an identity crisis sometimes, because you start dealing with people that don't know you,
Yeah.
right? And I think that what I found out was that it was very important for me to be kind of grounded in what I know about myself, what I know. And this projects a certain level of confidence that makes people believing in you more. But then there must be credentials behind it. So I spent a lot of time at the very beginning kind of thinking about how do I present myself to this new environment in which I'll be working right now. And I think that skills, like writing, creating content that is useful, actually are very helpful. Because how people judge you, they judge you based on your LinkedIn profile, they judge you based on obviously the experience that you have in your LinkedIn profile, but also what they see, content that you post, videos that you produce. So I think that my life turned very much into content production at some point, and making sure that it's all consistent with the kind of my personal brand that I want to project. But I did have a very specific personal brand in the pharmaceutical and medical device world, among connections that I have, and I needed to kind of take it, fine tune it, so that people just don't think that I am yet another corporate person that knows nothing about them and their struggles. And then kind of make sure that they know that, first of all, I understand their struggles, and secondly, that I can help them. But it's not immediate. It's a transition.
Yeah, I want to invite our audience to drop in any questions you have for Kasia, really about this journey too. If you're considering making this leap or like want to know what it takes, please drop them into the chat. So we'll have some time here at the end to address them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fernanda is saying that you are starting a new identity in a way, and I agree. I started a new identity in a way. That's very true.
As I was hearing you talk about content and this new identity, it's like, there does feel that pressure when you go on your own of like, do I now have to be like a TikTok influencer and a content machine? And there is some truth of like, you do need to refine your message and even just embrace your beingness, but how it shows up, the channels that you use, that's where you get to play and sort of figure out where you shine and what feels easy versus what feels inauthentic or not real to you.
And also what is manageable for a solopreneur. Because at this point in time, I plan to have multiple partnerships with other people who may complement my skills, but I don't plan to grow my company into a big consultancy. So, I mean, I may change my mind down the road, I will see, but at this point in time, I am a solopreneur by choice. So not building a big company. So what can I do? How can what is it that I can outsource? What can I do myself? And then just stick to it and not try to extend myself too much, because that's what I was trying to walk away from.
Let's pick up on that with this comment from, I love this name, Feminine Flame MD. It can be hard to know who to collaborate with and hard to give up control and outsource. And I mean, I'll speak to that too, of the hard to know who to collaborate with. I've certainly found that to be true, where I didn't appreciate the environment I was coming from, where working for CEB, Gartner, for SnapDocs, for really storied, prestigious companies, that therefore our network and who I could collaborate with was so incredible. When I stepped out on the entrepreneurial journey, it's been so much harder to gauge. And I'm getting way better now, like the real from the fake, because a lot can be a projection. It can just be content marketing with nothing behind it. And so what I
Yeah,
found is it takes a lot more discernment as an entrepreneur, because once people see it, it's like everyone's coming at you trying to sell things and all of that. And like, it's harder to tell the good from the bad when you're not sort of in the corporate world where like you kind of know the relationships. So
yes,
that's
definitely.
that's how I felt. How have you felt?
I felt exactly the same. And obviously I am being sold to, every day a new web developer tries to fix my website. And every second or third day, I have a couple of emails from virtual assistant companies, from, everyone. I think that what helped me to some degree is that even though I worked with very different vendors in the corporate world, somehow the way how you assess a vendor, what questions you asked, how thorough you are in asking about examples and not just listening to what they have to say about themselves. I even asked a couple of times to speak with the clients. And I got this opportunity once or twice, but then also starting, outsourcing things. If things don't go well, you need to quickly walk away from the company. If one or two red flags start to appear, I think it's time to maybe look at other options. And I am already on my second set of vendors versus the vendors that I started working initially. And it's also not only because maybe I was frustrated with the vendors, because sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes they just outgrew their purpose.
Yes.
Because things also change fast, and things that I needed at the beginning are very different than things I need now. So they kind of outgrew their purpose. So, we said goodbye without hard feelings, and I moved to another vendor who's currently meeting my needs much better. So that there's also this aspect that we shouldn't forget about. It's that, there's a vendor for a certain purpose and certain time, and then we move on because we change, and then there is somebody else. But that's also why it's good to ask people. And once I had again enough network in my new space, I was also very eager to ask people about referrals.
I really feel that of the, my marketing needs 3 years ago and what I thought I need. It's like every 6 months they've been changing. But what took me maybe a year and a half to realize on this journey is that the speed of decision making in the entrepreneurial world just matters so much. And so giving people the benefit of the doubt for like a super long time when you're not getting what meets your needs, you could there was a buffer in corporate for that of like, let's make this work. There's a lot less of a buffer in the early stages of your entrepreneurial journey, which I didn't realize the first year. I'm like, oh no, it will get better. And you're like, oh no, like we do have to move on to the next thing in order to keep momentum going.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I love these questions coming in. Let's check out this one from Jennifer. How much time do you spend on your current activities versus time on activities that will support to grow your business? So I feel like, Jennifer, you're asking that question of like, almost like serving the current needs, current clients versus growing the business. Kasia, do you want to take that one?
Yes. And I think I'd like to say that I'm still in my first year of my new consulting practice, right? So I still find that I am spending more time on business development and building the business for the future than on my current activities. And this is on purpose, because I'm still learning about the market. And again, the market is changing, so this learning will never go away. And I am still finding that some of the things that I thought would be useful at the very beginning, maybe I can find things that will be even more useful after, again, learning the market. So I am still spending probably 60-70% of my time on business development and developing my future, and the remaining time serving current clients. Because again, the selling cycle in this space is pretty long. So I am obviously acquiring clients, but it's not very fast. So yes, I'm acquiring, more and more and more. So this percentage will continue to change toward serving current clients.
Thank you, Kasia. And I like this question from Shamika. How did you handle the struggle between stability that you had with your 9-to-5, or for you, it was your 24/7, and freedom, what your business let's say your business may lead to, but yeah, we talked a little bit about that, but how has it felt, right? It's like you had the structure, now you have to create the structure for yourself, which a lot of people say that they want, and then when presented to them, it's like, wait, what do I do with this?
So I started with, when I left the corporate world, I started with a sabbatical. I just took 2 months and didn't do much during that time. Other than, it was, I left toward the end of 2021. So I just took time, went to Poland to see my family for Christmas, spent some time there, and was really thinking hard and talking with a lot of people about, how to structure my future business. And then some projects came in a little bit naturally because I knew people knew what I was doing. And 1 or 2 projects just came because people knew me and they came to me. So this kind of got me started. And then what I realized was, yes, I have to create my own structure. And first and foremost, I need to book time when I will not work. Okay, because I am incredibly talented in creating a busy schedule for myself. There's always something to do, and there is always this new thing to learn, and there is always yet another course that I could attend. And I've attended my share over the last year, and will continue, because obviously as a consultant you need to continue to develop, otherwise you very quickly lose value for your clients and prospects. But I do have to create structure for myself, and for me the biggest challenge is to block days and time during a day that I will spend on my own things, going to the gym, which I never had time for, going for a walk, which I rarely had time for, not working on weekends. And then what I found out is also that because of the need for business development and just basic administration, even for a small company, I need to block days on my calendar when I do not meet with clients. So I started with, because you have these, wonderful tools, like you send people a link, they book time on your calendar. But if your calendar is too open, out of a sudden, you have meetings from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. So, limiting the number of hours when people can meet with you, and then blocking. I've started from blocking Friday, and not to completely not to work, but to kind of catch up with the administrative work and maybe leave time for meetings that I really want to have, but maybe there was no time during the week. And then I did realize it's not enough. So now I have Monday and Friday blocked. It doesn't mean I don't work. It just means I try not to meet with people on these days, so that I have time for my content development. I have time to for administration. Actually looking at even my own marketing plan. What conferences I will go to this year. How frequently I need to write my LinkedIn newsletter. What topics I should write about. At the beginning, a lot of that is very spontaneous because you have so much in your head that you want to share with the world. But then once these obvious topics are already gone, then you need a little bit more planning ahead, right? So yes, I think it's a balance between creating a structure, but at the same time, really blocking time so that you can live your life as you want to.
And just to add on that and speak to the question from Fernanda of change and flexibility are a key part of this process, and any tips on that. I mean, I've gone through that same journey, Kasia, where it's constantly learning like what works for you. Like now that like you are the CEO, you are in charge. And a lot of times the thing that works really well for me is every month reevaluate, like looking back on the past month and seeing, how did I feel? Did I hit my goals? What did my schedule look like? And it gives me the opportunity for the month ahead to reimagine, reconfigure, to say, you know what, I do need to spend more time on marketing. Here's what that's going to look like. Mondays is going to be the day where I'm going to do the podcast. But every month, incorporate your planning every year. In startup world, you have to move a lot faster and be willing to say, oh, this is working. This isn't working. Here's where I need help. But if you don't bake in that time for reflection, then suddenly 6 months go by and you've been doing the same thing and getting the same okay results. Something has to change. So for me, monthly reflection, and it's just baked into my schedule, is essential. And I look at things like who I'm spending time with, what I'm spending time on, where I'm investing money, the kind of relationships that I have. I look at all of that and then say, okay, need to dial up health, need to dial down that. We just start to move things. And so it is, it feels very scientific, Kasia. It feels very experimental.
It does feel very experimental. Yeah. And I think that that's a very good system. And I probably have not reached yet the point when I will be as systematic as what you described.
Yeah.
But I do plan my month by month, and that's very true. So for example, there is a month like March when I had 3 major things. One is obviously the book and the launch, and this took it, as we know, yes. Yes, it took a lot of time. It was very exciting and wonderful time, but it takes time. So we have to properly plan for that.
Yeah.
There was one big thing. There was another big thing that I've done at the beginning of March. I decided to do a certification in artificial intelligence in medicine, and I did a board certification. So I am board certified in artificial intelligence in medicine, simply because so many startups are working based on artificial intelligence. This is the next frontier in medicine, and I need to be knowledgeable about it. And then there is another, and out of a sudden, there's another training that I'm going through next week. So March is really devoted to these 3 events. And on purpose, there's very little time in between. So yes, I continue meeting with my clients, but I'm not doing a lot of business development otherwise, right? And this is fine. And I have to be in agreement with myself that this is actually fine.
Yeah.
And I don't want to overwork, and I don't want to work 24/7 just to catch up, because I have this feeling that, you know, things are not done because I have other things to do. Yes, but that's important for the future. And then, you know, April will be another month when there's also a couple of events, but then there will be more business development happening in April, right? And then there will be May with yet another set of activities. So this is very true that month by month is probably the best way to look into the future and kind of based on what happened before, project what is it that I would like to do in the next month. And then there are some activities that maybe are non-negotiable. Like if I committed to write a newsletter on LinkedIn once a month, I am writing a newsletter on LinkedIn once a month, even if I don't produce any other content, because it says in my newsletter that it's a monthly newsletter. So I cannot out of a sudden start skipping, you know, editions. And obviously I have a lot of things that I want to put in my next newsletter. So of course it's a pleasure to write it, but I have to find time for a few things that are a must.
Well, what I absolutely love about this summit, about these interviews, about these conversations is like, we don't really know exactly where they're going. And I love how we kind of got on the theme of this conversation of like what it feels like to leave corporate, to build a business. Like I'm suddenly thinking like we could have a whole masterclass like coming out of this of like, here's what that path looks like and here's different ways. So seed planted for the future. So good. And Kasia, I want to thank you for being on this journey from day one, really, with Soul Excellence Publishing, for honoring yourself through the transition of the last 3 years, for showing up as you, for writing in the book, for sharing with us all today. And it was just so wonderful, again, to meet in person. And I'm so excited for what you're building, what you're creating. Thank you. Thank you for being
here. And I'm, you know, likewise, I'm very happy that we met. I'm very happy that I met other authors, and I'm very happy for this summit. I've been watching yesterday. I'll continue watching today and tomorrow. I think lots of great learnings coming from wonderful women. And I'm just looking forward for the next 2 days of the summit.
Me too. And I want to thank each of you for joining us live and on the replay. Like we feel your energy. I love the engagement, love the questions. So appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us for this special interview with Kasia. We'll be back at the top of the hour with a presentation from Terry Short, of course, one of our authors, with more to come the rest of the day. So thank you all for joining today. And thanks again, Kasia.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.